out and get yourself a refreshment. That's tea, just in case anyone's thinking otherwise. Some knowing smirks from possible from personal experience or people who know me better, but it's genuinely tea. So we are approaching the end of the day, and in the last hour, as I say, we're just going to close things up. So I'm going to start by inviting the chairs and facilitators of the poster presentations to just share their highlights and some of the challenges that were shared within the poster presentations for all of us. So I just go around the various rooms in the order that I joined them. So Claire and Peter, would you like to share some highlights and challenges from your posters?
Claire, do you want to start? Are you there, Claire? Claire, okay, so anyway, I'll start off and then Claire will carry on. I mean, it was great to hear these presentations. It's lovely to see people wanting to improve the way things work, to involve patients, to involve the wider team, and to really change a process of ward rounds that's been going on in certain institutions, and I could probably include mine to a degree, for years, if not decades. And the College of Physicians document on modern ward rounds really provides a wonderful series of ideas and thoughts on how best to do this. So yes, we heard some really good ideas, one about communicating with patients, leaving them with a message on the ward round, possibly dictating this with voice recognition software and getting that printed out in a simple way. I wondered if that could be also used to involve relatives, in other words, not just involve the patient in what was going on that day, but somehow give that message to the relatives as well. We heard about a busy emergency assessment unit and the challenges, as we know, of various ward rounds going on at the same time. And Wendy and I went to a very busy similar unit in Southeast London a few weeks ago, and managing that process of almost competing ward rounds and making sure everybody saw the right patients, particularly focusing on getting to see the right patients at the start, the sickest patients, the ones who could go home. Again, the College of Physicians document really focuses on that, rather than just what we often call the safari ward round. You start in bed 1 and you go round till you finish. We should be doing better. And also some comments again about nurse involvement on ward rounds. Again, we know this is very challenging. Nurses, as we know, are pulled in many different directions. They are very busy people, and trying to incorporate them in a ward round is a challenge, but one of the teams was actively trying to do that. So some really good projects, some great enthusiasm to create change. Claire, are you
I'm here. Sorry, Peter. I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
Yeah, so we heard from North Tees, Bedfordshire and South Tees, and all really fabulous projects. I think what struck me was the multiple QI projects within each aspect of the work, which was the complexity was just amazing. I really like the focus on nurse attendance though, and that it isn't an either or in terms of, you know, if nurses can't attend, that's it. There's a real encouragement and acceptance of if they can just see 1 or 2 patients, then that's okay, and it starts to change that culture and shift of the importance and the priority of the ward round. So really, really important stuff. We talked about miscommunication that can happen and how patients often know and can inform their own discharge plan. And we really wondered, when did that stop happening? When did we stop asking patients to inform their discharge plan? Do you know what I mean? So really important cultural themes coming out here. And we also talked about innovative solutions such as using voice recognition software, and how this in itself poses real challenges, and the real need to kind of link up people that are using these niche products, perhaps to see if they can learn together on those, such as voice recognition. But I think there's 3 points that we need to make here. And I think the first one is it's really important to acknowledge the detail, the time and the effort that's gone into each of the projects here, because we recognise the operational pressures that everyone's under at the moment. Secondly, how good it is to see the multidisciplinary team working, really coming together in all of this work. Doing this type of work together with a common goal is great for developing the MDT. And I think there's a real need to evaluate all of the outcomes of the QI work, not just the intended outcomes. So how did the MDT come together, and what's the difference made for them? And I think finally to say that the posters were really brave, because they looked at areas of concern. They weren't afraid to do so. And they looked at complaints and used that as a real learning opportunity to take forward. So not a most comfortable place to start with. But most importantly, I think the posters made the link between poor flow, so discharges being later in the day or delayed. They link that with patient experience and safety, so really bringing flow issues right back to the clinical conversation, which is absolutely where it needs to be. So I think seeing flow as a clinical quality and safety issue, that's got to be the right thing. So thank you, just brilliant work.
Peter and Claire, thank you very much, and thank you for the teams who presented. Sounds like fantastic posters and a really rich conversation. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move around now to Wendy and Ganan and your presentations. Now, how did it go for you?
Fantastic. Shall I just say a couple of things, and then I'll hand over to you if that's okay? Yeah, we heard from Sandwell and Birmingham, Brighton and Sussex, and University Hospital of Birmingham, and all three fantastic presentations. So from Sandwell and Birmingham, Nakib and the team talked about the huddle board, which is really a sort of an upgraded board round, really focusing on patients, really focusing on flow, and really great to hear as well how it fits in with the rhythm of the ward. So really trying to just bring everybody on board with it and making it sensible and making it work for patients. So that was a fantastic presentation. In Brighton and Sussex, the team there with Jamina and the team talked about 3 pieces of QI work that they're doing all at the same time. Fantastic QI methodology that they're using. And I was really impressed with the fact it's very patient focused. And they talked a lot about patient information, developing a folder, but also looking at inclusivity and looking at the ability to provide information that is in different languages and accessible for everybody. So that was really impressive. So thank you. And I think for University Hospital of Birmingham, a great presentation from Tahir and Jennifer and his colleague. And really, they'd used the self-assessment so well to identify the areas of focus. And I think, they were really looking at improving leadership. And again, going back to Claire's point, the multi-professional focus of the ward round is really important, involving nurses and everybody else is absolutely vital. And they've come up with a really clever mnemonic, which you better see on their poster, which is called Remind, and it brings in 6 elements that they need to cover on the ward round. Really clever, and that involves, from EDD to respect for the ceiling of care, to the mental capacity as well that they consider. And also investigations, but nutrition and hydration, a really important part of the ward round, and also DVT and risk assessment in that way. So using that really cleverly to help junior doctors understand the importance of those elements. So all 3 presentations really patient focused. So thank you so much. Ganan, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, to echo all of that, I mean, it was just a really impressive, lovely session, wasn't it? So Sandwell and Birmingham, I think, really epitomised taking an evolved MDT that clearly had a rhythm and a manner of working that works for them anyway, in a culture that's collaborative, and using the modern ward round collaborative framework to just give them an actual intrinsic framework around which to build that and expand it. And what you really noticed when they were talking was that they were giving voices to the marginalised, so members of the MDT that may not always have been highlighted in a uniform fashion, actually giving that a true voice as part of the structure of their day and their board huddles. Sounded brilliant, to be honest. And I really like the point where Aravind actually mentioned the word D2A and getting that lingo into the rhythm of how they discuss their patients, because exactly what Claire was saying, talking about discharge as a clinical conversation, it's part of the care journey for the patient. So that was great to hear. Brighton and Sussex as a group. And if you want to watch Indoctrination into QI from F1, F2, ST5 all the way through to consultant, hey, you've done a brilliant job in terms of being a clinical leader who disseminates that infrastructure downwards. I came very late to QI methodology, and watching that level and spread of background, all embracing a real multifactorial approach where they're expectation setting both for the patient and for the junior doctors on the team. And so you can really see an opportunity here where when the transition and handover happens, Well, when you turn up for your first day on that job as an F1 or an F2 or a registrar, you already know what the ethos of the team is. It's right there in front of you, and it's MDT based and patient focused. And there's a lovely bit of work there that they're doing, and how on earth they're doing 3 work streams with 3 PDSA cycles and still quantifying it is very impressive. But centering it around patient care and a patient journey, and around junior doctor experience and what that looks like to be part of this team that isn't just about the doctors but about the nurses and the therapists, was great to see. And it's sort of, if they can bottle the sustainability piece of that, I think will be really lovely to learn from. And the new HB really, you know, they've come down with, John, you've heard me talk about this, the core metrics of care for any inpatient. And as a physician who works in surgery, it's just so brilliant to know that as a trust, they've got buy-in and an ethos around the idea. It doesn't matter what you've come in with, these are the 6 things we need to be acknowledging for every single one of our patients. And they've got the classic challenges of an electronic patient record and all of the faff that involves in terms of getting away from paper and onto digital, which one day will be better, but getting there is horrible. But they've done the hardest bit first, which is the cultural buy-in and ownership and value, and placing that as priorities to the agenda. And it's great to hear that they're rolling out into trauma orthopedics, into general surgery, into colorectal. So yeah, that mnemonic, I think we'll be seeing that coming up in the future again. So I mean, all 3 trusts facing what feels like very different, disparate challenges, but actually when you boil it down, very similar. It's all about cultural change and ethos, and then bottling that into sustainability across the MDT and giving everyone a voice. But yeah, it was really inspiring to hear.
Lovely, thank you both very much, and again congratulations to the 3 teams presenting. It sounds really high quality, so thank you very much indeed. Finally, I'm just going to move on to Dan and Kate and your session. What were your reflections from what you heard?
Well, I think we're just going to be as effusive as everybody else is. We've had a fantastic session. We had Sandwell and West Birmingham stroke team presenting, and from Leicester, Victoria presented 2 projects from their clinical decision unit and their renal unit. I had great co-chairing with Kate, and we had great input as well from John from the RCP and Eddie Kinsella from the patient voice as well. Interestingly, we seemed like we had a theme in our room. Our theme was kind of about the preparation for the ward round. And so we had fantastically co-developed quality improvement projects from each team, co-developed with all members of the multidisciplinary team. One of my main reflections was the fact that there seemed to be fantastic cultures in each of those teams and organisations, because every element of the MDT was able to speak up, suggest changes. And Victoria was describing at Leicester for one of their projects on the CDU, they've lost count really of how many iterations of their PDSA cycles they've done to improve one of their handovers. The other interesting thing is that we talked about what a typical board round should look like, but actually what they've done perfectly at all 3 organisations, or 2 organisations and 3 wards, is they've co-developed a specific type of ward round or board round or safety huddle to suit the environment, to suit the clinical type of patients. Sandwell, fantastic work, which was very patient focused, looking at talking at a patient's eye level, but also doing what was described as quite small changes, but those small changes will all add up to incremental significant improvement in patient care, such as making sure the hoovers don't go on during the patient ward round so that we can actually hear each other think. And at Leicester, as I say, fantastic work looking at the huddle and the safety huddle and the board round. And also one of my pet peeves, which Ganan just talked about, our progression onto electronic patient records and how we can kind of improve that. My last thought is the fact that, interestingly, all the projects were at a similar stage. They've all made significant improvements, improvements which they've got lots of qualitative evidence for, and all of the projects were thinking about what outcome measures, what balance measures to start recording. So over to you, Kate, any other reflections?
Yeah, so I was just going to really bring in about the fact of using the self-assessment tool and how that unites people to create a shared purpose across their teams. And, you know, with that shared purpose becomes that people, you know, they want to be part of it and they become investors. And because they're investors, they grow what's happening. They're there on the floor growing it. And I think that was really evident across all the wards that we talked about today. And, you know, Leicester, especially with their admissions unit, you know, they've got everybody saying, you know, I want part of this. And it's almost like they've created a movement for change. You know, it wasn't their intention. Their intention was to make their experiences for their staff and patients better, but it grew into almost like a movement for change. And I think, you know, that's absolutely brilliant, because, you know, the word on the street, what other people hear about this work, pulls people to be part of it. So, you know, it's obviously going well. And the other thing that I think was really important to me about some of the Leicester work was improving the experience of staff in slightly different ways. So those that have worked night shifts could get home earlier, and I'm sure most of us could understand that horrible feeling when you are then stuck in the, main traffic of the day trying to get across, and all you want to do is get to bed, and it's hideous. So, that makes a massive difference to experience of being at work. So I'm just really impressed with all of it. And I think, as people go forward, this work will spread, and we can't wait to see what happens next. So well done, both of you. And to say, the simple things can make such a big difference. So well done.
Thank you, Kate. And I think the last point actually I should make sure I mention is the fantastic work of the clinical teams, but also of the QI teams in those two organisations. So Essie was on the call from Sandwell and Victoria from Leicester. They're already picking up the work they're doing on those wards and sharing their resources and their information and their learning across the other wards on their trust as well. So it was fantastic, really heartwarming to see how that work, those small tests of change, are becoming massive cultural changes across organisations. John and Eddie, did you have any comments before I hand back to Andrew?
Oh, I'm really impressed with all of the presentations in our group. I think what comes across very clearly is that there's a genuine desire, motivation on everybody's part to try and make things better for patients, and that gives you the momentum. That was really impressive.
Yeah, to me, I guess three things. Firstly, the use of the self-assessment, as Kate said, was quite powerful in how that had brought the team together and started that ethos, or built on the ethos of the whole team. How the momentum had gathered, and how small, simple changes when combined had made a difference. And in each of those, in all of that, it was so contextual. It was using the principles and putting them into the context of what the people who knew best, the people that worked on that unit or worked with that unit, could do. So that was very striking, and that's true QI, isn't it? So that's brilliant.
Great, thank you all very much. That's brilliant to hear. We may well be asking people to review and redo their self-assessments. We are expecting, or we would expect, a slight change in the scores, perhaps a little bit more insightful, so we might expect some of the scores to drop at this stage in the collaborative as people have started to form as teams, as people have joined learning events, and sort of, I don't mean this in a patronising way, but as all our collective eyes have opened to what is going on and what is out there, we might find that the scores drop a little bit, but then improve in the second half of the collaborative. And we've heard some great examples of PDSA cycles and change methodology so far in the programme. The second half of the programme is going to look much more about education and training. It's going to look at innovation and creativity, more co-production, and finally looking, if you like, the golden nugget will be the sustainability. How do we sustain and spread the work that you've already started? So thank you all very much. Thank you for the chairs and facilitators. The next part of this final event, I'm going to hand over to Louise and Lindsay from the evaluation team. Now, as part of this collaborative, there's been quite a lot of work in the background about whether the way the collaborative has been set up and structured, and the events as they're being delivered, and the coaching that's taking place, is that going to deliver what we hope it will deliver? Is it going to be successful? So if you like, there's several PDSA cycles, for want of a better term, running underneath the programme, about the programme, which we're all part of. Lindsay and Louise work for NHS England and part of the evaluation group, and have been supporting us as part of the steering committee to help guide us and shape how we put the programme together. I have to say it's been an enormous pleasure working with them. It's been really challenging and insightful from my perspective, and it's really, I mean this in the best way, put a little bit of grit into the way that NHS improvement and some of these national bodies work in a very positive way. So I'm going to hand over to Lindsay and Louise, and a spoiler alert, they're going to ask you to do some work. So Lindsay, thank you very much.
So if we can get the tech right, that is with Crystal's help. So hi, I'm Lindsay, and as Andrew said, thank you for that lovely introduction, Andrew. I'm from the evaluation team within NHS England and working alongside my colleague Louise. Be joined by Louise shortly, I think. It's just thank you first for, before anything else, thank you for letting us join this meeting today. It's been a real privilege to dip in and out of some of the amazing work that's going on. And, as an evaluator, and typically I would be interested in how you're evaluating your projects. And it was really interesting to see such a variety ranging from kind of formal outcome measures and structured audit approaches through to more qualitative storytelling, which, structured or unstructured, and picking up different perspectives from patients and from the staff. But perhaps linked in, thinking how that links back to the objectives and the self-assessments that the objectives that you've derived from your self-assessment, and how you get a golden thread through from there to your evaluation. So it's just really interesting to see that. From our perspective, though, as Andrew said, Louise and I are particularly focusing on evaluation of the collaborative, if you like, and of the ECIST work, and how that's helping you to achieve those objectives and to run your processes. And we're loving working with this group. It's great. First off then, so just by introduction, we'd just like to ask a couple of very quick questions, just to give us a couple of insights into how that process is going for you. So thanks, Crystal. I think you're going to put up the first question. Is that okay? First thing we'd like to know is, can you describe, if you've all managed to access the Mentimeter using the QR code, just in a few words, there are some speech bubbles on there. Could you give us a description of what was your primary reason, your motivation, if you like, what led you to want to join the collaborative, to want to take part? We're just interested to see the range of perspectives on that.
That's fine. So if everyone can see the QR code, you just need to use your phone or device. You can take a picture on your camera and it will bring up the Menti, or you can go to menti.com and type in the code 23778500. So we'll just wait for a few people to join, and then we've just got a couple of questions for you once you're on there. Oh, so we've already had a few.
Ah, great. Yeah, lots about patience. I love that one about bringing the pleasure back. Yeah, lots about sort of generating ideas and knowledge from working with one another. I'm just interested, I don't know who wrote the one about bringing the pleasure back, but what is it about this process that generates that pleasure? It seems to me there is a lot here about that learning and generating ideas and learning from one another, that is, apart from driving the formal outcomes we want, just gives us a better experience.
Some great things coming through. Should we move to the next one, Lindsay?
Yeah, if people have finished it looks like.
Yeah, there's lots.
There's still lots coming through, which is fantastic. If people are ready to sort of wrap that up now, we can perhaps move on. But Crystal, we'll be saving this, won't we? We have this saved. Yeah, it's great because there's some real clear themes in there, and I did love that one about bringing pleasure back. We all need to have pleasure in our work, and this collaborative certainly gives it to me, and that's really good. Crystal, can we go to the next one then? For our next Mentimeter question, we've got a shorter one, which is one of these speech bubble things. So we're asking you to describe in 3 words, if you can, what your biggest challenge has been so far in the process. And some people have already got going with that. That's great. Yeah, time, and that came up in the presentations. Wardcraft. Yeah, I love that. Do you know, yeah, and time really came up in those presentations. I was thinking about that whole Wardcraft thing, Andrew, and how, you know, how important that is. We talk so often about these surface skills and knowledge that we learn, but the whole sort of more subtle craft of the way we collaborate to do things is not so often talked about. That Wardcraft is a great concept. Time is the key in this, isn't it? And getting the team together, that's an interesting part of Wardcraft as well, is it? How you actually convene the right team and get everybody in the, you know, the herding cats thing, I guess, getting people in the right place at the right time. And measurement. Yeah, difficult to know where to focus sometimes on the measure when you're doing such a broad initiative, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, and competing priorities presumably are what lead to the difficulties of time and loss of staff. Okay, well, that's brilliant. So we will keep these, and if you're happy to, they'll be sort of form part of the context picture for the evaluation that we write up when we're thinking about how this process has worked for people. And there'll be more from Louise and I over time, but I think in a minute, I don't know if Louise is quite here yet. Crystal, do you know whether she is? Is Louise here?
I can't see at the moment because I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, so if we can give a couple of minutes for Louise to come through, because Louise is going to talk to us about the evaluation plans.
Are you happy for me to bring the slides up, Lindsay?
I think so, yeah. I mean, if anybody's got initial questions, but Louise will be explaining what the evaluation is from our perspective as well in a minute when she comes. I think we'll give Louise a couple of minutes. I know she's planning to come at 3.
So I'll come in, Lindsay. I've been thinking about the term Wardcraft since John introduced it to me very early this morning, and I rather like, because I quite like the art of medicine over the science of medicine, and I think there's something around the creativity, the artistic side of the word Wardcraft that appeals to me. It's a sort of, yeah, almost a softer skill than the science involved in maybe a ward round process or the diagnostic process. I'm hoping that I can't remember, and I'm gonna go out on a limb, and we just need to watch Crystal's head react, because she knows the timetable. So if I've got it wrong, Crystal's head will come up, and I'll know I've got it wrong. So I think it is the clinical learning event in October that Natalie and her team are talking from Health Education England, talking about competencies for ward rounds, and I think that will really bring all of this together over and above sort of professional silos. Is that right, Crystal? Have I got the timing right on that?
I believe so, yes.
Oh, phew, no pressure for me.
I was just interested in where that term actually Wardcraft came from, because I think it came up in one of the breakout groups I was listening to. Somebody did mention it. Is it a kind of commonly used term, or has it come about specifically within this collaborative? I just loved it. I thought it was really summed up.
My physician colleagues will be delighted to know that it came from a consultant surgeon in my organisation. So
yeah, that's good, and it'd be interesting to think about how different groups of us understand, or how different parts of this process are realising that Wardcraft. Yeah.
And so John, you've put a really important sort of message in the chat room, and I'll, if while we're waiting for Louise to join, I will pick that up if that's okay. So there's no point in sort of pretending otherwise, but we have had organisations that have had to withdraw from the collaborative because of a variety of reasons, mainly operational. There may also be a sense that some people were, a lovely term that someone used the other week, which is they were voluntold rather than volunteered. They were voluntold that they were going to be part of the collaborative, and that's never a great engagement piece, I don't think. I'm sure that all of us on the call can relate to that kind of experience. However, we are not, we continue to invite those organisations. They are able to access all the resources freely as everyone else is within the collaborative. And we are also going to be inviting them to some focus groups specifically to and anonymously to explore the challenges they face, because we think that is a really key aspect of the collaborative. The context and the attraction for me about this collaborative, it's not prescribed, and a lot of this kind of work in hospitals tends to be top down, very prescribed. This is a very different approach to collaborative working. This is people assessing how they feel they're performing and where they want to improve, and then being supported to improve in those areas. And I think if there are boards and organisations that haven't been able to engage, even if they wanted to engage for whatever reason, that the narrative around that and understanding that more is really key to some of the senior clinical leaders, not just in their own organisation, but in some of the arm's length bodies that we deal with and things. So, John, it's a really good point, but we are aware of it, and we will the reasons why people have not been able to engage and felt unsupported with this will form part of the narrative of the overall collaborative, because they're not forgotten. It's really important, and it's a message we need to understand. So I think I've just seen Louise join us.
Perfect.
Perfect timing. Saved by Louise. Hi, Louise.
Yeah.
Hi, hello. So we're ready to go with the presentation. Lovely. So I don't know if she's already introduced herself. Lindsay, who's on the call, and myself, Louise, we're from the evaluation team, which is part of analytical services in the CDAO Directorate, which is the Chief Data and Analytics Office, part of NHS England and Improvement. And we were asked if we would be able to help do some evaluative activities in a sort of collaborative space with the Modern Ward Rounds Collaborative, which we jumped at the chance to do. It's a really interesting collaborative and something that's very interesting to work in terms of the evaluation. And obviously an evaluation is only as good as the input and the feedback and the participation of the members and people involved in the evaluation. So this slide is just asking, really, this is information for yourselves at the various sites. Why would you want to participate in the evaluation activities we have planned? And I shall go into more detail about what they are a little bit later. But really, we just want to improve the understanding of what's working well with the initiative, whether there are any areas for improvement, both in terms of your own teams and for future cohorts, and to provide further insights into what participants need from the programme. With the ultimate aim of, helping to secure resources for the further work of the collaborative, increasing participation in the collaborative and in individual projects, and increasing the chances of success of the participating projects. So those are things we hope the evaluation will contribute to, and we'd be very grateful for your input and involvement in these evaluation activities over the next couple of months. Next slide, please, Crystal. So in terms of what we propose to do, the first stage that's actually been completed is we've worked with the Modern Ward Round Collaborative steering group for developing a logic model. So for those of you who aren't familiar with a logic model, it basically looks at sort of what the aims are of your piece of work or your program, you know, what you're hoping to achieve, what impact you're hoping to manage to attain. And it relates that to the activities that you're conducting and the outputs of your activities. So it tries to sort of create a model really that depicts what you're doing and why and what you're hoping to achieve. So that's something we've been working with the collaborative. And in the next slide, you'll see the logic model sort of output that we managed to work together to create. Somebody's just noted that they can't view the slides. Can you all see those now? There was a comment that somebody couldn't see them. If you can see, what you're looking at now is the logic model itself, which is very full, and we'll probably need to sort of reduce that down at some stage, but it basically looks at, you know, the inputs, the resources that you have for the program, for the collaborative, the activities that you're pursuing, the outputs of those activities, and then the sort of outcomes that you're hoping to achieve is sort of the final impact. And that's very difficult to read on this slide. So there's going to be a link popped into the chat so that you can open up an easier to read version. So if we could just go back one slide, please, Crystal, just for the second part of the evaluation support, and that's some metric development. So again, we're working with the Modern Ward Round collaborative team to look at ways that the programme as a whole might be able to measure its performance and demonstrate impact. And we're using the logic model as a basis for that. So if we now jump forward 2 slides, please. These are the parts of the evaluation activities that we'd be really grateful for your input and involvement with at the sort of individual site level. So we'd like to create a series of case studies pulling out key themes that we see sort of arising at the sites at certain stages, and these case studies we would then reflect upon in a final workshop. What do I mean by that? So for instance, many of you are at the planning stage, or you've completed the planning stage, you've used your self-assessment tool, you've chosen a project and you've started on that. So we would like to survey you with a relatively short 10 to 15 minute long online survey that we're going to email you the link to, just really to get a bit of input from yourselves in terms of how you found the self-assessment process, whether it was useful for choosing a project, how you came to decide on the choice of project, and who's involved in working on that at the site level. So this would be one survey that you'd be receiving in the next few days, take about 10 to 15 minutes, complete online, and we'd propose a further 2 surveys to take place before the end of the year. Again, online, relatively short online surveys. Then at the end, we'd like to conduct some workshops to which we'd like to invite you so that we can gather some sort of final lessons learned and insights at the end of your work with the collaborative, looking back on your experiences so that we can gain some sort of further insights there that can help with making sure everything's on the right track and improving anything that might be able to be improved. So those 2 things are the main things we're asking for your help with: completion of online surveys, 3 in total, and workshop or a focus group to take place at the end of this sort of cycle of your work with the collaborative. Next slide, please, Crystal. Thank you. So with this data collected, you know, what that I was showing on the previous slides, we're going to collect and analyse that data that we receive from yourselves, together with insights that are captured at events, for instance, the Mentimeter polls that you all fill out, any feedback forms or storyboards, so that we can analyse some of the main themes that are coming out. And as I said before, summarise and present the information and discuss with yourselves in focus groups or a workshop to take place at the end of well, probably the beginning of next year now, about January would be those final workshops. Next slide, please, Crystal. So again, just the next steps, a survey link, if you agree to participate, and it would be super if you could help us with this data, will be emailed to you by your Modern Ward Round collaborative contact in the next couple of days. Won't take very long to complete. It's the first of 3 surveys, and then we would also like to contact you later on in the year about your participation in a lessons learned workshop. And for those of you that don't have a project but are still participating in events, we'd very much like to interview you. So a short Teams interview about why a project wasn't possible, whether there were any particular issues or experiences around that we could learn from to help future participants regarding that stage of the work. So I think that's all I was going to say. Oh, our 2 email addresses are here. If you have any questions, please drop us a line at any time. We're both here today, Lindsay and I, so if there are any questions now, very happy to answer any. Otherwise, that would be it from us from the moment. And thank you very much in advance for your help and participation with these activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay and Louise. And just to reiterate that your involvement in this as delegates is really, really valuable. So this is a very different approach to improvement from the centre. So feedback from the front line will really help shape improvement offers moving forward. So please can you help us with that? Thank you both very much once again. Wendy and Claire, I'm going to hand over to you for the last section of today's event. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So just wanted to outline some of the next steps and some of the exciting work that's coming online for us next. So just start by mentioning our next clinical learning event, which is on Tuesday, the 28th of September, and that's 1 till 2 p.m. as usual. This is our second session focusing on ward round processes, and we'll focus on high risk areas, out of hours and handover. But there's more details will follow early next week, but do check that date is in your diaries for that one. And I'd like to say a few things about our next kind of venture into regional peer support group as an offer. So having heard from the ward teams today across the MDTs and being at midpoint of the collaborative, this now really takes us into what feels like a new phase of the programme. And had this been a pre-COVID face-to-face kind of collaborative, participants would have had far more time in a room together, time for networking, making contacts. But as we're in a virtual space, we wanted to provide an opportunity for you to work together in a slightly different way. So one where participants can truly gain the benefit of the collaborative approach through peer learning, sharing and supporting ideas, etc. So we looked at all of the organisations that are enrolled in the programme so far, and rather than dividing you by topic area, we felt it was important to divide you by regional areas. So in view of the numbers, we've joined some of the regions together. So if we put North West and North Eastern Yorkshire together, that gives us a maximum of 5 organisations. If we join Midlands and East of England together, we've got 6 organisations within that group. And again, London and South East together will have 5 as well. So we're offering these as 60-minute drop-in sessions to provide an opportunity for you as participants to collaborate and learn with those outside of your organisation, but within the patch. So you can offer suggestions for the agenda prior to the session, or you can choose to engage on the day if you want. It's your session, so it's how you want to play it. So we want this to be a forum for you to bring a problem or to share good practice, some practical solutions and ideas in a way that you and your peers can develop and generate ideas to put into practice. It's an opportunity also to tap into the knowledge of your peers in the area, and also time, importantly, to step away and begin to reflect on some of the work that you're doing as well. But essentially, although we will coordinate and support these as much or as little as you want, these are your sessions to shape, okay, and get the most out of. And I think today's poster presentations really has given us a taster of this. The sheer variety of topics that we've been able to cover has absolutely been fantastic. So invites for these events will be circulated early next week. We're really excited to be working with you on those, really to get into some of the detail about what you're doing. As I say, I think today's been a real taster for that. So at that moment, I'll just ask, are there any comments or queries about the regional support offer? Or does that seem quite clear and a good way forward? Yeah, okay. So before we wrap up then, I'd like you also to see the link on the slide or on the flyer that you've had from Crystal earlier today, where you can access the poster hall on our futures page. Here you'll be able to see all of the submissions from today's event. You'll also be able to access this and all of the previous sessions on both the NHS platform, futures platform rather, and also on YouTube. And I need to also draw your attention to the feedback survey. So feedback is obviously essential for all the work that we do, and so that we can improve our collaborative and our offer to you all. So once you complete your feedback, you will get a certificate of attendance, and it's really quite a smart certificate, so you all will want one. So please do your feedback. Okay, so I think that just brings me to thank everybody for their input to today. It's been an absolutely amazing session. You've not only shared your work and experience from the keynote speakers this morning, but you've prompted us, I think, to think differently and to consider other aspects within our QI work, with the introduction of sustainable QI and thinking more holistically about improvement. Adding to the environmental and kind of social impacts to our measures and creating a real energy for that change. So really looking at it with fresh eyes. I think you've shown how kindness and a simple thank you and the smallest things can make a big difference. And I think you've refreshed our energy in QI and given us new ways to apply it, and how working differently can create capacity and make everyone's lives easier, not just the big stuff that we do, but the small things too. Just really, really amazing. So I'd like to thank particularly all the participants and the poster presenters today for your brilliant work, enthusiasm and inspiration. And we really recognise the operational challenges that everyone's up against at the moment. So it really shows your commitment to this collaborative, which is just phenomenal. And finally, I'd like to thank the team that worked behind the scenes to make all of this happen. And particular thanks to Crystal for her attention to detail and really keeping us on track with everything that we do. And it's no mean feat really to do that, because we're quite an unruly bunch, and we can be. Yeah, so I've certainly made new connections, picked up new ideas, and I feel really inspired by what I've heard today. So all I can say is thank you to everybody for a great session. Thank you, everyone. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Bye now.
Bye.